Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast, where we navigate controversial topics, deep dive into life-changing stories, and engage in meaningful conversation. Join us in embracing the beauty of mindful motherhood. I'm your host, Corinne Adele. Welcome back to the Mindful Mama podcast. Today we're going to be chatting about my second birth story. So this is the birth of my double rainbow baby girl, Cicely Sloan. This was my first home birth. And man, I have a lot to say about this birth. It took me a very long time to, I don't know if deconstruct is the right word, but to figure out this birth, to sit with certain things. I don't know, I guess come to an understanding of how it impacted me, because from the outside, and for the most part, it was a dream birth. I mean, I got almost everything that I prayed for, and I sung nothing but praises about how amazing that birth was online, which is all true, but it took me quite some time to figure out that I actually have a lot of trauma from that birth that I'm still dealing with 3+ years later. And that is really hard to sit with. So let's just get into my very beautiful dream home birth / trauma inducing home birth. For Cicely's birth, we decided on doing a home birth. We actually wanted to do that for the 2 babies that we had lost before her, but she finally stuck around. And so we began care with my midwife and we loved it. She had a beautiful tiny home out in the woods that we would drive to. And it was just such a cozy experience going out to the tiny home, getting to sip tea and just chat, and all of my appointments were just so enjoyable, and I really looked forward to them every single time. My pregnancy with Cicely was super easy for the most part. I do have a condition called SPD, which gets worse with each pregnancy. With Florence, it was actually debilitating. With Cicely, it was very, very, very bad. It kind of immobilizes me, and honestly, I should use a wheelchair. It's that bad. It really stops me from doing like daily activities. Near the end of my pregnancy, I'm no longer going to the store. I'm no longer going on walks. I'm no longer doing daily life because the pelvic separation is so intense. Rolling over in bed is excruciating. Trying to put your shoes on, trying to take your pants off, like anything having to do with the lower half of your body is horrendous. So I did experience that, but besides that, my pregnancy was great. I really didn't have any issues, and this was going to be the first time that I gave birth without being induced, because my son was induced at like 39 and 3 due to his small gestational weight. Spoiler alert, I have small babies. All of my babies have been small. So I knew that I wanted something different this time around, and I had discussed that with my midwife a lot. And my fundal height was always measuring small. I never got above a 34 centimeter with Cicely. Same thing with Flo, never got above a 34. But that was my wish. That was my wish, was to not being induced. I wanted to go into labor naturally. And as time went on, I was pregnant for a while. I didn't know what to expect as far as like length of pregnancy, because I got induced early with Israel, and I just thought, I'd give birth somewhere around the 40-week mark. And I stayed pregnant, and I came around to 41 weeks. And then I would wake up every day, 41 and 1, 41 and 2, 41 and 3, 41 and 4, every day waking up pregnant, going to bed that night, hoping and praying that I was going to go into labor. And I just didn't. And at that time, me and my husband were not good. We were not close. We were very disconnected. I was really struggling with that, and I felt really alone. We don't have any family here. And at that point, I didn't even have any friends here. I had nobody. It was just me and Israel in the home alone all the time because Aiden worked really long hours. And I really wanted support during my labor because this would be my first time giving birth without an epidural. And I thought I needed all of these people surrounding me at my birth to help me. I was really worried about like Israel waking up and not having someone there for him. So I wanted all these people. I invited Aiden's mom. I invited my sister. I invited my mom. I just wanted all of these people surrounding me, which is totally fine and valid. But they all came up early thinking, well, she's going to go into labor. So they all showed up around my 40 week and we were all just sitting around waiting for me to go into labor. They were taking time off of work. My mom took time off of work. My mother-in-law took time off of work. And we were just kind of sitting around the house waiting for me to go into labor, which that's like the worst thing for you to do if you're trying to go into labor is have people waiting for you to go into labor. So I just like felt so rushed and I just felt so bad. It wasn't even that I was done being pregnant because I wasn't. And my true desire was to wait it out and go into labor when I go into labor. But I just had this like compound, I don't even know. I just felt so pressured. I just felt pressured to get this baby out. So, of course, I tried everything, all the things to try and get me to go into labor. And that was so mentally draining. Every single day I'd wake up pregnant again. And I was just like, that was miserable. Me being pregnant was not miserable. But what was miserable is trying to force myself to go into labor and the mental load of like, I just need to have this baby. Not for me, not for my baby, but for other people that are around me so that they can get back to their normal lives, right? I was under the impression that you could not stay pregnant past 42 weeks. Like I thought that was a reality. Like you had to transfer to the hospital if you hit 42 weeks. And that is like I don't know if you would call it a law, but like a legality issue in other states. Like Idaho, midwives are forced to drop you if you hit 42 weeks and you're not in labor. But not in Washington state. You can stay pregnant as long as you're pregnant and midwives do not have to drop you. I didn't know that. So I thought we only have until 42 weeks until I have to go to the hospital. And I don't want to go to the hospital and be induced again. And I was like, I need to protect my home birth. Like I can't stay pregnant and go to the hospital because I'm refusing to do something about going into labor. And then I end up getting a terrible labor and delivery experience and my home birth dreams are crushed. So I legitimately thought that I had to take it into my own hands and force myself into labor. So I don't talk about this online. I've never shared it on my Instagram because I don't want to promote it. I never want to promote doing what I did because what I did is very dangerous and I was in a very different headspace back then. I would never repeat this ever again. But I drank castor oil to force myself into labor and it worked, but it was a horrendous experience. So with the recipe that my midwife gave me, it was a double doser. So you take one dose and then 5 hours later, you take the second dose. Usually you feel nothing with the first dose. And then the second dose is what kicks it into gear. Now, I was told that it just starts contractions, which is so not true. The reason why it starts contractions is because it makes your bowels so irritable from shutting your brains out that it kicks contractions into gear. Some women are ferociously throwing up and that's what kicks them into labor. So it's not the fact that castor oil has some magic contraction starter. It's the fact that it's irritating your stomach and your bowels and your intestines, which are all near your uterus, which then causes labor to happen because you're constantly on the toilet, you're constantly vomiting. I've actually heard of women who had like a really bad stomach bug near the end of pregnancy, and because they were throwing up so much, that started labor. So again, it's not like, oh, castor oil has this magic thing that's going to start your contractions. No, it's because you're so sick. Because you're so sick, contractions begin. And I was so sick. I was so sick, you guys. After the first dose, I took it at 12 p.m. and I made sure I had a full belly. I did everything right. It was so hard for me to drink. It was horrendous. Like, to this day, I could literally throw up right now just thinking about this smoothie, this labor smoothie. It was so bad. I never threw up, but it was like, you know, that feeling that you have of nausea, like the height of nausea right before you throw up, right? It is like the height of nausea. That's what I felt like all day long, plus shouting my brains out every 2 seconds on the toilet. I had so much diarrhea that I gave myself hemorrhoids, which is insane. So all I could really do was lay in bed in misery all day long. And then when it came time to take my second dose, I was already so deep into this labor cocktail smoothie that of course I have to take the second dose or it's not going to work. And I just made myself miserable for no reason, right? So 5 p.m., I can barely get it down. So I'm taking, I was kind of treating it like alcohol. So I would take a sip and then shove a lemon in my mouth as a chaser in order to keep me from vomiting it up. I was gagging like crazy, but I did it and I got it down somehow. And I was having consistent contractions that you would consider Braxton Hicks. I don't like that term just because it was a man who named it after himself, and it literally is just contractions that don't lead to labor, right? So you'll get contractions at the end of pregnancy. I get them a lot when I'm pregnant. And they're usually just like a tightening that can become uncomfortable, but it's never in like painful and it doesn't lead to labor. So I was having those like practice contractions all day, but that wasn't abnormal for me. And things didn't really start up. So I was like, awesome. So I did this and it's still not working, right? So we get Israel to bed, and I think it was around 9 p.m. that I was like, you know what? I am going to pace around my room to get labor going. I am not just going to go to bed. I'm forcing my body to do this. So I literally am just like scrolling through TikTok and I'm just pacing my room like a mad woman for like an hour to get contractions going. And it works. It literally worked. And I was also constantly on the toilet too. So every time I had a contraction, I could not hold my bowels. Every single time I'd have a contraction, poop would be flying out of my bottom. So I couldn't do a contraction without sitting on the toilet for the first hour or so. I did eventually get cleared out because I wasn't able to eat anything else that day. I was so dehydrated. Oh my gosh, like I made myself sick to go into labor. So I was depleted going into it. My labor with her was only about 3 hours. So it was really, really quick. And as soon as it started, I was like in transition. It was like no mercy, transition contractions from the start. And I labored really well. And it was a really decently easy labor. She was sunny side up, which means her back was to my back and her face was up, which makes labor a little bit more difficult because of the positioning your baby is in. So basically when a baby is sunny side up, the biggest part of their head is coming out instead of the crown of their head, which is the smallest part, which is the easiest way to get a baby out. We knew that she had been sunny side up pretty much the entirety of the end of my pregnancy. As women, our bodies are constantly evolving, and Indigo Luna gets that. Their beautiful, sustainable clothing made from natural fibers is designed with you in mind. Embracing every curve and change, including the seasons of pregnancy and breastfeeding, rooted in slow fashion, Indigo Luna prioritizes ethical production and timeless designs. As a newly postpartum mother, they really helped me rediscover my confidence and style. Feel good in clothes that honor your body and the planet. Use my link in the show notes to save 10% off your order at indigoluna.com. I think my babies just like to be that way because Florence was also sunny side up for a long time. I just sat on the edge of my bed for the majority of my labor, clutching a cold rag. I would put it on my chest, I would put it on my forehead, I would put it over my mouth, and I was just sitting there laboring. And honestly, it was a really nice, peaceful labor. I had my photographer there. Shout out to Natalia, I love you. And my mother-in-law was right next to me, being my support. Aiden was kind of like setting up the birth pool, getting it filled up with water. My midwife ended up showing up an hour before I delivered her. And when she showed up, I was actually sitting on the toilet huffing frankincense essential oils. And the first thing I told her when she came in to check on me was, I got a hemorrhoid. I was so upset. I was like, you're kidding me. So anyways, my labor was it was really nice. It was easy. It was quick. At some point, my midwife kind of intervened in my labor land and was like, Corinne, you can't give birth like this. You're going to need to change positions. Let's go ahead and do side lying release, which is a set of movements or a movement that can help get your baby flipped if they're sunny side up and into the best position to be pushed out. And when she first mentioned it to me, I knew what that meant, and I knew it was going to be horrendous. Because if you've ever done the side lying release during labor, you know that it is hell. It's hell. Those are the worst contractions I've ever felt in my life. So bad. So yeah, I just looked her in the eyes and I ignored her because I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. Nope, you're not going to move me. And so she let me labor a little longer and was like, all right, let's do this. Let's get you into this position. So I was like, oh, fine. And I laid at the edge of my bed and we did side lying release. I couldn't even get through one contraction doing side lying release before my body was pushing Cicely out. So I think I tried to do 2, maybe 3 before we were like, okay, let's get you into the pool. My midwife was like, if you want to give birth in the pool, we need to get you in there now because your body is pushing. It is time for you to get in the pool. So my team kind of helped me walk to the pool. I got into the pool and I let my body take over. And I was pushing for, I think I pushed for about 20 minutes. I think it was about 7 contractions. Maybe it was a little longer than 20 minutes, but it is intense. It is so intense when your body begins to take over and push your baby out. The best way I can describe it is it feels like you're throwing up backwards. Like you cannot control it. All you can do is literally hang on for your dear life and just let your body do it. So I was kind of like leaned back in the pool. I was hanging on to Aiden's hand and Aiden's mom's hand and just hanging on for dear life while my body did its thing. And man, I remember thinking when Cicely was crowning that if it had lasted any longer than it did, that I would die because it was so painful. Oh my gosh. I have never experienced the ring of fire with Cicely. With Florence, I've never experienced the ring of fire. What I did experience with Cicely was an immense amount of pain. It was crazy. And It was over really quickly though. Like once she was there crowning, it was so quick, and her head came out, and then I had a break, I had a break while we waited on another contraction, and then her body came out. And when she came out, she was tangled up in her cord. So she had a nuchal cord. It was wrapped around her neck and her body like a little seat belt. And I had forgotten to warn Aiden that nuchal cords are totally normal. And like 99% of the time, there's no issues with a nuchal cord. So he was terrified because my baby comes out, our baby comes out, and there's like 3 people trying to untangle her, but she's slippery because I just gave birth in the water, and we're trying to keep her above water. And I'm just kind of sitting here like, oh my gosh, wait, I just gave birth, trying to comprehend that while my midwife and Aiden are like trying to undo her cord. So it didn't take that long. It was pretty quick, and she was on my chest. And it's just one of those like out of body experiences where you're like there, but you're not there. And you're like, whoa, did that just happen? And it was really hard for me to grasp that it happened so fast. Like my labor was like 3 hours long. My midwife was only there about an hour before I gave birth. And then she stayed for, I think, like 2 hours afterwards. But it was just like, holy crap, like that just happened. And I did it. Like there's so many mixed emotions with giving birth, especially when you do it without an epidural for the first time. I felt so on top of the world, so like powerful, so proud of myself that I accomplished that. And it's just, it truly is the best feeling, to be honest, to be able to have like a undisturbed physiological birth, if that is what you're desiring. And I achieved that. That's what I got. And I had the support that I needed, and it was great. I held Cicely in the pool for, gosh, it wasn't even that long. I didn't get a golden hour with her, and this is where my trauma comes in. Man, I think it was maybe 20 or 30 minutes before I delivered the placenta. It came decently fast, and that was also so painful. I did not expect for my placenta to hurt when I gave birth to it, because most women say that when you birth your placenta, it's super easy, it feels really good, whatever. But for me, it felt like I was birthing another baby that was a jelly baby that had no bones. So it came out easier, but it still hurt. I did not expect for it to hurt. Like I literally kind of yelled a little bit when it came out. I did not experience that same type of pain with Florence's placenta. So I don't know why Cicely's like crowning experience and birthing of the placenta was more painful, but it was. And I remember thinking, I will never give birth on land, because if it hurt that much in the water, and the water is supposed to kind of like take the edge off, I can't imagine how women give birth on land. Spoiler alert, if you don't already know, my next baby, she was born on land and it was not near as painful. So I don't know. But anyways, I gave birth to my placenta about 20 to 30 minutes after she was born. And after that, my midwife wanted me to get out of the pool to assess bleeding, because it is harder to know what your bleeding is looking like if you are in a pool. So she asked if we were ready to cut the cord, and we said yes. So Aiden went ahead and cut the cord, and I passed Cicely to Aiden, and my team helped me get out of the pool. And from there, Cicely was passed around the room to everybody that was there, pretty much like my family. They were all holding her. As I was laying on my bed, my midwife was assessing me. She was stitching up my tear. I was brought a drink, some electrolytes, and a snack. And in the moment, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Like I was fine with it. I do remember hearing in the background my midwife saying, okay, we need to get baby back to mama. But it never happened. Like she was never brought to me. So we didn't get a golden hour at all. And I remember hearing her cry. And in the back of my mind, I was like, why is she crying so much? And then I quickly just like answered myself and I was like, oh, she's just a newborn. She's just a newborn. She was just born. That's why. But now that I know her, she was crying for me. But nobody was giving me my baby. So we had immediate separation. Although we were in close proximity, she wasn't with me. She wasn't on me. She wasn't on my chest. We weren't breastfeeding. I wasn't holding her. We weren't doing skin to skin. It was, let's pass the baby around the room while mom gets stitched up. And I don't necessarily like blame anybody for this. It was kind of just something that happened. But to me, it just seems kind of simple. Like you give birth to the baby, and just because you transfer to the bed doesn't mean that the baby needs to be separated. Like get mom to the bed, give her the baby. And that just didn't happen. You know, she was with my husband for a while, and then my mother-in-law took her, and then my mom and my sister. And I don't know how long it was, because postpartum brain, it's hard for you to tell time, especially when you're in labor too. I don't know how long it was before I got her back, but I didn't get her back for very long before we then did the newborn exam. So she was given to me. I fed her for a little bit, and then she was passed to my midwife who did the newborn exam, which takes time. And again, the whole time she was screaming, just screaming. And my mom had actually ran out to go find a binky. And she was like, here, do we need a binky for her? Because she was crying that much. Like even my mom was like, whoa, she's crying a lot. Like, should we give her something to soothe her? You know, but it's like, what would soothe her is giving her to her mom. She was just born. Like, you should never be separated like that. There's no reason for it. There was nothing wrong with her. There was nothing wrong with me. We were at home. I gave birth at home. Like, this is the reason people give birth at home, so that they're not separated from their baby. They're not whisked off to do exams. They're not taken to the NICU for no reason. They're not passed around the room. Yet that still happened to me. And it took me over a year to deconstruct why I was having such severe anxiety. It wasn't until my first trimester with Florence that I finally had like an hour-long appointment with my midwife, explaining to her what I wanted for Florence's birth. And we just talked about Cicely's birth. And I was like, this is what happened to me, and I have severe anxiety now. So my postpartum anxiety began from that moment, and I didn't know it. It was day 3 postpartum that I had my very first panic attack. I have never experienced a panic attack in my entire life, and I had no idea what was happening to me. It was terrifying. And I ended up calling my midwife in the middle of the night, like, Rebecca, I don't know what's wrong with me. My blood pressure is through the roof. I'm so scared. I keep feeling like I'm going to pass out. Like I was literally laying in bed. It was nighttime. Israel was sleeping. Aiden was upstairs gaming. I was laying in bed, and it just came on to me. I was like trying to sleep. It was almost like I got quiet enough for my body to then like, I don't want to say attack itself, but like go into this massive emotion release, or whatever you would want to call a panic attack. Like I wasn't busy. Cicely was sleeping. Israel was sleeping. Aiden was upstairs. I was trying to sleep. I was quiet enough in my body for my body to then be like, nope, we're going to deal with this right now. And it was terrifying. So I took my blood pressure, and it was through the roof. My heart was pounding like crazy. I was terrified. I called my midwife, and she was like, I think your blood pressure is high because you're like worried. Why don't you take it again and see if it's lower. So I took it again and it was lower. I was convincing myself that I had like postpartum preeclampsia because I didn't know it was a panic attack. That was the thing, is like, I just thought there was something wrong with my body. I couldn't even like, it took me 5 years to finally find non-toxic makeup that's not only nourishing to my skin, but actually performs well. As a previous makeup artist myself, I absolutely refuse to spend my money on makeup products that do not work. Crunchi is the brand that finally converted me. They have personally banished over 10,000 ingredients that do not make the cut into their products, that unfortunately is in most of the makeup we use day in and day out. I'm personally obsessed with their cream concealers and their cream blushes, and I finally started wearing lipstick again because I actually feel good about kissing my babies while wearing it. So their lip pencils are a must. Click the link in my show notes and add the code ADVOCATE10 for 10% off your first purchase with Crunchi. That's Crunchi with an I. And make sure to use my link or the code will not work. Consciously, I don't know, be aware enough to know that I was having a panic attack. I didn't know. I didn't recognize it. I had never had a panic attack before, and that was really, really scary. So I had that episode that night, and it was kind of like a little bit reoccurrent. It happened a couple of times, but I was able to like calm myself down. And then from then on, it was like every single night I would have severe anxiety, heart pounding, stomach turning, literally having to go to the bathroom, like run to the bathroom because my stomach is like so filled with anxiety that I have to go empty myself. Tightness of the chest, just feeling like it's just like so intense. It's such an intense anxiety. And 3 years later, I still deal with that. And I go through seasons of it being better, but the winter months are the hardest. And I wonder if it's because I already struggle with seasonal blues, or if it's because I gave birth to her in the winter. So my body like recognizes like, oh, this is the time that the separation happened. Your postpartum anxiety began, your panic attack began, your anxiety hit. And so it is kind of like cyclical in a sense, where I do get kind of reprieves from it. But they don't last long before I will go back into having anxiety a lot. So I'm not quite sure how to heal myself of that. To be honest, it's not something that I can control. It is like, cognitively, I know I'm fine. Consciously, I know I'm fine. I'm safe. My babies are safe. My husband is safe. We're all good. I'm fine. But my body takes control and forces me to feel these intense emotions. And it's all physical. It's all physical. It's me having to go to the bathroom, the tummy ache, it's almost like you get electrocuted in your chest. It just comes on immediately. It's just like an electrocution of anxiety in your body. And then from there, it takes a long time for me to come down from it. So my heart immediately starts pounding. So it'll go from me being calm to immediately pounding, tightness of chest, having to go to the bathroom immediately. And I can't control it. Like consciously, I'm like, I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm okay. But like my body doesn't feel that way. My body is like out of control. Sometimes I worry talking about it because there will be people who will roll their eyes at me and be like, you did not have birth trauma. Like that's not birth trauma. Listen to my story or whatever. And like people will compare trauma to trauma. But there is this like saying that you can drown in an inch of water and you can drown in an ocean. Whether it's an inch of water or an ocean, you can still drown in it. So I just sometimes worry about being vulnerable with this story because most people would hear my birth story and think, what's wrong with it? Like, you had a great birth story. No one was hurt. Your birth was quick. Your baby's healthy. You were healthy. You had a home birth. It was a great birth. You had an amazing team. You had a great midwife. And all of that is true, but I still left that birth injured emotionally. And 3 years later, I'm still working through it. And it's hard. And confusing, because I do believe that two things can exist simultaneously, and that is a wonderful birth, but also trauma. And I feel like maybe that's a reason why I have such a hard time like figuring out how to move forward and heal myself from this anxiety, because it is two things at once. So, yeah, I definitely need to seek therapy for it. It's just hard to find the time. And I don't even know what type of therapy. I don't know what kind of therapist. I don't know anything about that. But I do know that I want to be healed from it, because I wouldn't say it's debilitating, but it lowers my quality of life at night. When the dark and twisties start to happen out of nowhere for no reason. Like, my body thinks there's a reason, but consciously I'm like, this is not a reason. And I do have more anxiety about Cicely than I do about my other two kids. So anytime I hear her cry at night, or if she just literally moves in bed and like hits something and the monitor is up loud so I can hear her, I'm instantly in that panic mode, worried something is wrong with her. So I have a lot of anxiety specifically about her as well at night. And I think for a while she could really feel that when she was a baby, because immediately postpartum, she was a really hard baby. I could not put her down for 4 months. And when I say I couldn't put her down, I mean I couldn't set her down. I couldn't put her down and walk away like in a bouncer. I couldn't put her down in a snuggle me. I couldn't let anybody else hold her, including Aiden. Aiden would have to hold her and pace around the room as I took a 5-minute shower just to clean myself off. And as soon as I got out and she was on my chest, she would stop crying. So there was damage there. There was an injury there, not only for me, but for her. And she felt it too. And she was so traumatized that for the first 4 months of life, she would not allow me to put her down ever or give her to anybody else. And it was hard. I remember thinking, I'm never going to have another baby because this is so hard. Like, I can't put her down. She lived in my tuck and bundle baby carrier, and she was in that thing all day long. From the minute she woke up to the time that we went to bed, she was in that baby carrier. She only got out to nurse and change her diaper, and then she went back in. And it was so bad that my collarbones they felt bruised. They felt like they were breaking, because when I was wearing that carrier, it's not like the most supportive carrier, but it's really nice for newborns because it's so soft. My shoulders were kind of like pushed forward a little bit in it. And so they were always kind of pushed forward. Plus the weight of her was like pulling them down a little bit. My collarbones ached for months because I was carrying her for so long. And I was starting to worry about her hip development. I was going to my chiropractor and being like, is this going to affect her hips? Because it's really hard to get that good M shape in the soft carriers because they're not structured, so they don't keep your baby's hip in the right shape. You kind of have to like maneuver it. And a lot of the times her legs would kind of go straight, and that's not proper for hip development. So I was talking to my chiropractor. I'm like, I'm really worried about her hips because I carry her all day long and I can't put her down. And my chiropractor is like, well, as long as she's getting equal amount of time on her tummy doing tummy time, she's going to be fine. And I was like, no. I don't think you understand. She's not doing tummy time. She's on the floor 0. She's never on the floor. I can't put her down. I literally cannot. I can't. So the first couple of months of her life were really hard, really hard because of that separation that happened between us. And one day she kind of just like turned a new leaf, and she was feeling better. It was almost like she needed 4 months of constant golden hour, skin to skin, chest to chest, in order for her to heal that separation that happened at birth. And she took that time. She took that 4 months to heal, but I'm still working through the trauma and don't really know what to do with it because it's still there. It's still very present. And yeah, so that is my birth story with Cicely. And if you resonate with it in any sort of way, if you have advice for me on what I could do to try and heal that, or like types of therapy that you would recommend, if you have gone through something similar to me where it's like confusing, let me know down below in the comments. I'm open to advice. It's just one of those things where it's really confusing because I did get an amazing home birth. It was almost everything that I prayed for, except for the date that I wanted her to come. It was so beautiful, yet I'm left still in this trauma. So, yeah, that is my full birth story that I have never shared online. A lot of this I have never shared for a lot of reasons because it's hard, and it's hard being vulnerable. It's hard when people pick you apart. But yeah, I just hope that me sharing this is able to help other women who may be in this confusing time themselves, where they have gone through a beautiful birth, but they're yet still like so broken afterwards and they don't really know why. And I guess the only advice I can offer, and it's not to heal your anxiety because clearly I haven't figured that out yet, but is if you feel like there's something wrong, our skin is our biggest organ, which means it absorbs all of the toxins we are exposing ourselves to every day. Because of this, I'm very mindful about the skincare and body care I use for myself. Osea formulates their skincare with seaweed because it's a superfood rich in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. Different species of seaweed can provide a myriad of benefits, including anti-aging and moisturization. They source their seaweed from different places around the world based on its high mineral content and combines it with other naturally derived ingredients. Use my code Corinne10 for 10% off, or see the link in my show notes. Tell someone your birth story and really, really go into detail. Really sit with it. Really think about everything that happened. And that will help you kind of like untangle the things, because that's what helped me. It took me a year to even be able to sit there and like relive every detail and really dissect it and untangle things. It was over a year it took me. But once I did it, I was able to find the answer. And now I understand why I feel the way that I do, and why I do struggle with postpartum anxiety, and why I do feel this way. So at least I have the answers as to why this happened and why I feel this way. And in some ways that can be helpful for me. But yeah, that would be my only piece of advice, is to really sit there and think. Tell a trusted person your entire birth story. And if you don't have anybody that you can trust, write it down. Type it out or physically write it down, every detail. And maybe you can just sit with that and start to untangle it piece by piece. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this birth story. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. And that concludes today's episode. If you found value in this conversation or resonate with it in any way, I'd love for you to leave me a review on whatever platform you're listening in on and share about it on social media. Your support means the world. For more content like this, you can follow me at Corinne Adele on all platforms. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.